All right, it's on.
Proceed.
The Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States has been a topic of controversy for hundreds of years. The Second Amendment protects the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Throughout the history of the United States, many people have tried to decide just what the right to bear arms really means. Most people believe that it means that the citizens of the United States are able to bear arms, while others believe that only military personnel is allowed to possess firearms. We will discuss the history of the Second Amendment, the reasons for the controversy and point of views of the amendment, and finally the reason why we have the Second Amendment and why it is necessary. When our founding fathers were writing the Constitution, they wanted a country where every man was equal and had equal opportunity for success. Being a newly formed country, we were able to look back at history and find what worked for other countries and what didn't work. With the right to bear arms being the Second Amendment, it's easy to see that the founding fathers believed that it was a very important topic. But during the time they were writing it, the Constitution, America was at war with England, the greatest empire in the world at the time. So naturally, all Americans were involved in the fighting, and the founding fathers wanted every man to be armed so that they may be capable of fighting an experienced war machine. Many people believe that the Second Amendment is only appropriate during times of war or occupation. Although this is a valid point, I believe that the men writing the Constitution meant that every American citizen has the right to protect his property and his life by any means necessary. Every man must be given the opportunity to protect himself. We all know the saying, don't bring a knife to a gunfight, because your chances of winning the fight are not very good. But thanks to the Second Amendment, we are given the choice of owning a gun or not, so that in the event of a gunfight, we're not tied down with only clubs and knives to protect ourselves with. The main argument against the right to bear arms is the fact that firearms are extremely dangerous when put into the wrong hands. There are many people in the world who would rather steal from hardworking people than to work for themselves. Due to our rights as Americans, thieves and murderers are able to possess firearms and therefore are able to kill whenever they please. This creates a huge problem for people without firearms because of lack of self-defense and protection. I can understand the point of view where people want to do away with firearms for all citizens, but I also believe that if it were to happen, we as citizens would not be able to fight for what we believe is right. Firearms are extremely dangerous, but only when they're in the hands of the wrong person. We trust our military and law enforcement with weapons, but the trust put in civilians with firearms is dwindling. Due to the unpopular reputation of firearms being the tool for robbery and murder, some Americans are ready to get rid of the Second Amendment altogether. The list of reasons to do away with firearms could go on forever, but I believe that the most valid points are made on the case of why we should bear arms. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese army could have very easily invaded the West Coast and started to occupy the United States. The Japanese knew that the Americans had the right to bear arms, and even a normal civilian was capable of fighting. The Japanese thought otherwise and decided not to invade the United States. Just the fact that we are able to protect ourselves with guns caused the mighty empire to think otherwise about an invasion. If the American people did not possess the right to bear arms, there's no way of knowing what would happen after Pearl Harbor, and thankfully we never had to find out. I believe that America would be the hardest country to invade just because of the fact that civilians are capable of putting up a fight, rather than having to surrender to a foreign invader just because they have firearms and we don't. Another reason I believe the Founding Fathers made the Second Amendment is so we can protect ourselves from our government if the occasion ever arose. Thomas Jefferson said, "The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny and government. If the government takes away the civilians' right to protect themselves, then they would instantly have supreme power of the people, and we would be forced to comply with their demands." George Mason was quoted saying, "To disarm the people, that was the best and most effectual way to enslave them." Hopefully the people of America would never allow that to happen. Both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama trying to create gun control in America. It seems that the government of the United States is at least beginning to try to do away with the Second Amendment. Jeff Snyder said, "The possession of firearms by the people is the ultimate warrant that government governs only with the consent of the governed." The causes of controversy of the Second Amendment are very basic and easy enough for everyone to understand and create their own point of view. Of course, there are biased people living throughout the country In some parts of the country, particularly the South, hunting is a big sport, and people who do hunt see a necessity in owning firearms so that they're able to participate in the sport they love. But in the North and Northeast, where there are a few hunting grounds left, the people do not see a need to carry firearms and only view them as deadly weapons. In the major cities in the North, such as New York or Boston, they often see gun-related crimes and instantly blame the Second Amendment as the cause of it. They believe that the only way to get rid of gun-related crime is to do away with firearms completely. I don't believe that is the right course to take, but I do believe that there are some rules that we could make that could eliminate the threat of gun-related crimes. Anyone that possesses a criminal record or has a history of violence should not be allowed to own a legal firearm. A gun is only dangerous when it's put in the hands of someone who is incompetent or is looking for trouble. So in a way, I believe that there should be some form of gun control. I also believe that the actions of a few criminals is not enough of a reason to take away the right to bear arms for all American citizens. The grand solution to this dilemma is to leave the Second Amendment the way it is. I believe that it is our God-given right as Americans to possess firearms to defend ourselves with if we see that it is necessary. James Madison was quoted saying, "Americans have the right and advantage of being armed, unlike the citizens of other countries whose governments are afraid to trust the people with arms." There's always going to be crime, and there will always be illegal ways to buy firearms. But if our Second Amendment was to be taken away from us, the country as a whole will be unable to defend itself from foreign or domestic enemies. The local solution is to persuade the people in our community to see that firearms are necessary and a good thing when the time comes when you will need it. If you can find enough people to support your cause, you could make it known to the government on where you stand on this topic. Our government was created by the people and for the people. Therefore, the government must at least listen to what you have to say and take it into consideration. The more people we can get that support the Second Amendment, the less power the government possesses to take it away from us. On a personal scale, the best thing I could do is to join the NRA or the National Rifle Association. The NRA is America's foremost defender of the Second Amendment. The more members that join the NRA and the more money that is donated to its cause will only help the fight to stop the government from even considering of throwing away our Second Amendment. I find it hard to believe that there are Americans that are willing to throw away our right to protect ourselves just because they only hear the horrible stories of firearms. Yes, guns can be bad, and yes, they do kill people. But if we do lose our right to bear arms, we only become a country full of citizens without a voice. Americans will become nothing but sheep to the American government, and at that point, it will be too late to do anything about it. The history of the Second Amendment has been a long and hard-fought battle over what the amendment really means. Does it mean that we as American citizens have the right to bear arms, or does it mean that only military personnel and law enforcement officers are able to carry firearms? Claire Wolfe said, "When only cops have guns, it's only then is it called a police state." Who decides who is right in this situation? Ultimately, it's we the people of the United States. I believe that every American should cherish this right to bear arms rather than trying to throw it away. The Second Amendment is what protects us from corrupted government officials, criminals and murderers, and if the event ever arose, foreign invaders. The right to bear arms is one of the greatest privileges for being an American. It is one of the many reasons that separate us from the rest of the world and the people who live under a government that is in complete control and gives their people no voice to be heard. I will conclude the speech with a quote from Paul Harvey when he was asked about Cuba. Paul Harvey said, "They have gun control in Cuba. They have universal health care in Cuba. So why do they want to come here?" There is always going to be gun-related violence wherever you are in the world, but I believe that to do away with the Second Amendment would open the door for the government to step in and assume even more power over the people. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have a question. When was the Second Amendment adopted?
It was adopted on December 15th, 1791.
What year was James Madison's initial proposal?
It was in the year 1789.
What year was the NRA created?
The NRA was created in 1871.
Very cool.
Where did the Founding Fathers get the idea of the Second Amendment?
They stole it from the English when they were writing all their laws in the old country.
Very good.
That's it.
Very nice job, Aaron.
Good job. That guy.